You reach the end of the workday, close your laptop, and feel physically exhausted. Yet you haven't moved from your chair in 8 hours. If you review what you actually accomplished, the feeling makes even less sense. You likely crossed almost nothing off your primary list. Instead, as you sit down for dinner, your brain remains locked onto a tense email exchange from hours ago, or calculating the parameters of a project that isn't due until next week. Why does our cognitive capacity drain so severely when the total volume of completed work is remarkably low? This exhaustion stems from a structural failure in how human memory networks allocate resources to incomplete tasks. Mainstream productivity advice frames distraction as a personal failure, assuming you simply lack the discipline to stay present. Instructing someone to try harder to concentrate ignores the hardwired biological constraints of human working memory. To understand the problem, look at this data network schematic. We must stop treating attention as a psychological trait and view it as a highly interconnected system with a hard bandwidth limit. Within this model, unresolved tasks act as open loops. They operate as invisible, persistent background processes that constantly draw power from your central system. To stop cognitive degradation, we must stop relying on willpower and engineer precise protocols to forcefully terminate these unauthorized background processes. The biological imperative behind these open loops was identified in 1920s Berlin by psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik. This captures the busy cafes where Zeigarnik observed waiters working. They could perfectly memorize highly complex orders for large tables without any recording tools. Yet, the exact moment the customer paid, the waiter's perfect retention of that data vanished entirely. Zeigarnik formalized this as a neurological reality. Human memory treats incomplete tasks as active, open loops that require continuous monitoring until resolved. In a modern office environment, you are continually bouncing between hundreds of microtasks, leaving dozens of them completely incomplete simultaneously. Your brain runs persistent background checks to prevent data loss on all of those tasks, elevating all unresolved work to the forefront of your awareness. Business professor Dr. Sophie Leroy spent years fully analyzing the cognitive impact of professionals shifting focus between many complex projects. She identified a core biological failure during context switching. Your concentration does not cleanly or completely transfer to a newly assigned task. This creates a system error Leroy termed attention residue. As nodes shift locations, a measurable fraction of mental energy remains physically anchored to the initial incomplete project. This residue artificially caps your available processing power, degrading parallel efficiency as energy bleeds back across those tethers. Leroy even found that successfully completed tasks generate this residue if the brain isn't granted a processing pause to register the victory. Rapid bouncing between assignments forces the brain to pay a cognitive tax, which degrades performance and drains daily energy reserves. The standard office surrounds workers with a continuous stream of forced micro-interruptions and rapid context shifts. Look at the network stress here. Every single unmanaged interruption forces your brain to initiate and sustain a mu-isolated background process. New research indicates that a forced interruption requires an average 23-minute recovery time before regaining your absolute full concentration. You might feel like you are instantly replying to a quick message, but mathematically, you are incurring a 23-minute cognitive debt. Subjecting a finite memory architecture to an unlimited number of open loops results in systemic exhaustion. Since we cannot eliminate interruptions from our workday, we must engineer a patch for the transition mechanism itself. The neurological requirement to release working memory is strict. Your brain must receive a verified completion signal. When actual completion is impossible due to an interruption, we have to artificially manufacture a pseudo-completion signal. We execute this using an engineering concept called cognitive offloading, targeting isolated memory nodes like the one shown here. Externalizing the task data proves to your nervous system that the information is safely stored, which forcefully severs the tethers and terminates the open loop. You apply this logic through the ready-to-resume framework, a precise 60-second transition protocol executed at the exact moment of an interruption. Step 1 is the friction pause. You force a strict temporal delay instead of instantly pivoting to the new demand. Step 2 is the anchor statement. You extract the current data state by physically writing down exactly what you are currently executing. Step 3 is the launchpad instruction. You formulate and write down the hyper-specific, granular next microstep required to resume the project later. Attempting to hold your safe state purely in volatile working memory carries a high failure rate. This analog externalization process ensures data safety. This physical documentation provides the signal the mind requires to safely drop the task, preventing the further buildup of attention residue. The operational advantage takes effect the moment you return to the interrupted project. By reading the externalized Launchpad instruction, you completely bypass the grueling 23-minute concentration recovery penalty that drains most professionals. You instantly drop back into a state of optimal flow without expending mental energy orienting to the previous task state. Your ability to focus is never permanently broken. It simply gets buried under the data debris of unmanaged transitions. Consistent offloading cleans up residue and preserves finite cognitive bandwidth for critical tasks. Mastering this architectural transition allows you to fully clear your memory cache at the end of the day, returning complete mental presence to your life outside the system.